Now, nearly 2 in every 5 women in the world who kill themselves are Indian. They are more likely to be married than not, and on average come from some of India's wealthier states. Well, to talk a bit more then about what the experts are calling India's public health crisis, we are joined now by Poonam Muttreja, the Executive Director of the Populations Foundation of India, a NGO that helps women to take control of their own reproductive rights. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for talking to us on France 24. That then, an extraordinarily grim statistic. Nearly 2 out of every 5 women in the world who kill themselves are from India. Why do you think that is?
Well, one is the way girls are treated, the lack of value for girls even before they are born. We abort a large number of young girls, babies, even before they are born. So you can imagine we not only have a son preference, but we treat a girl like a burden even before she's born and after she's born. Early marriage, domestic violence, sexual abuse is a huge problem in a patriarchal society where 62% of the men believe it's legitimate to beat their girls or their wives or their partners. Women experience huge forms of violence without any support within the family or outside the family. And the public health system is developing a response at this point of time, but so far, the public health system in India and the medical community has never recognized violence as a public health, mental health issue. We do not have support on mental health counseling for young people in schools or in the houses. So the only choice young girls seem to have, unfortunately, is to take this drastic step of suicide.
And when you talk about some of the options then to combat these tragic statistics, is that what you think is necessary then, to have a better mental health provision to support young women?
Absolutely. So India has just recently started, made a mental health policy. 1, 2, there is a big push in India, and given these statistics, we are doing advocacy for sexuality education, for gender equality, for violence against women in schools as well as in society at a broader level. Second, there's been lobbying and advocacy for the government to treat this as a public health issue, and these statistics have spurred India into at least thinking about doing something.
One of the things that's really interesting and perhaps surprising to an external viewer is the fact that the majority of these suicides are taking place in some of India's wealthier states. Why do you think that's happening there?
You see, in the wealthier states, sex selection is highest amongst the richest, because they are worried about giving dowry to the children, to the girls. They are worried about sharing property and so on. So girls are seen by boys in general, or males see females as people who are going to share their property, take away their property. They have to invest in dowry. So the daughter aversion ends up being translated into domestic violence, and not just domestic violence, but all kinds of sexual abuse and violence. And also within the alcohol abuse and drug abuse is much higher amongst the wealthy and the rich, which again is a very globally proven indicator for violence against women or abuse of women when there is high consumption of drugs, alcohol, etc.
Well, rich or poor, though, we know this is not just an Indian problem when it comes to violence against women. But certainly in India, there's been lots of public cases recently that have brought the attitudes towards women really into the international spotlight. In a way, is that good news? Is that helping to raise awareness and start conversations in India about women's rights?
Absolutely, it's good news. The global community does matter for India, and Indian government, especially the government of the day, takes the criticism, does not like criticism, but takes it seriously, where the good news is it spurs action. So I am very happy to see that happen. But also within India, There is a huge body of research which is happening outside India, or international research, which the government is, I'm happy to see, is being taken seriously.
Let me ask you then about Let me ask you about a different study which is also been released earlier on this year. This is from the Thomson Reuters Foundation. They say that the most dangerous country in the world to be a woman is not Saudi Arabia, it's not Afghanistan, it's India. Does that surprise you? Were you shocked by that finding?
It does not surprise me at all, because, you know, in India, the maximum amount of sexual abuse, the highest levels of sexual abuse is within the household. So who is going to protect you from the men in your family? It's not just sexual abuse, domestic violence is within the household. So it is dangerous for a woman, because then the police and other external factors don't kick in. You can try and have policing, change the laws, but if the abuse is happening in the household and a young girl is very traumatized by putting her father in jail, or a brother or a cousin or an uncle in jail by reporting. So there is so much pressure within the family not to report, even by the women. See, patriarchy is not practiced only by men. It is unfortunately forced upon women to be practiced. So therefore, there is very little protection for a girl or a woman in the household. So a woman in a country where a woman is not safe in a household, where government cannot come into your bedroom through the police or laws and do very much. So therefore, it is absolutely appropriate to say a girl is at a highest risk and dangerously lives within the country, in our own home, in our own village. And because it is seen as a social patriarchal norm to be practiced, as I said, 62% men and 60% women believe that it is legitimate for a girl to be beaten, right? So given that, how do you change? How do you change and protect a girl? So she's unprotected and therefore dangerous. Absolutely right.
Let me ask you this just very briefly before we have to leave you. If you were hired then by the Indian government to take steps, what would you say the national government needs to do? Just very briefly, if you can.
First, make all forms of violence against women, sexual or domestic, a public health issue, where a frontline health worker reports on any violence that a young girl experiences. Prevention is very important. We need to have a lot of education and hopefully entertainment education, which has been proven globally to change social norms. So we must have education in all our public forums, whether it's television, radio, Indian films. We need to permeate everywhere, and prevention is better than cure. And then promotion, both the public health response and response of the Women and Child Ministry, where there are Anganwadi workers, frontline health workers are the first contact of women and girls in the villages because of maternal health and child health. We have a very well structured, spread out public health system, and public health system can both prevent and promote.
All right, thank you very much for your time and for your analysis on this important but particularly sad topic. Poonam Muttreja there talking to us there from the Population Foundation of India.